Hello, how's it going? Zach D Productions here, and I'm here for a movie review for you guys. So for this review, I'll be reviewing The Amazing Spider-Man. This movie came out in 2012, and this was the first movie to not be directed by Sam Raimi. They instead got Mark Webb. These are known as the Mark Webb Spider-Man films, and this stars Andrew Garfield as Peter Parker, aka Spider-Man, and this also stars Emma Stone, who plays Gwen Stacy. Now, when this movie came out, I just know that there's been a lot of divisive opinions about it. There's people that like the movie, and then there's people that just despise the movie. Some people even say that it's the worst Spider-Man film ever. For me, I do have my issues with it, but I would say it's a pretty solid film overall, and I don't think it's as bad as a lot of people are saying. Now, whenever this movie came out, because a lot of you know that I've been a Spider-Man fan for many, many years. He was basically the superhero that described my elementary school years, you could say. And I just remember after the third Sam Raimi movie, I've been anticipating a fourth one for a while, and it eventually got to a point where I just gave up on waiting for a fourth one and just kind of moved on to other things. So by the time this movie came out, I pretty much had no interest in it. I didn't see the movie when it came out or anything, because again, I really didn't have much interest, and especially because it's a different actor who is not Tobey Maguire. Now, I think if they would have continued Spider-Man 4, like if Spider-Man 4 would have released in 2012 instead of this movie, I probably would have had a little more interest in seeing the movie, even though I did kind of fall off of the Spider-Man bandwagon for a while. Even though I've always considered myself a Spider-Man fan, even to this day. But there's gotten to a point where I just kind of lost interest a little bit, but, whatever. But of course, I eventually ended up checking out the film, and yeah, I do think it's solid for what it is. There are definitely things to like about this movie for sure. Andrew Garfield, I think, is a pretty good Spider-Man, and I think he does a pretty good job as Spider-Man, and I just know that a lot of people really never appreciated his portrayal as Spider-Man until No Way Home came out. That was really when a lot of people started to somewhat desire a third Amazing Spider-Man film, and that's something that I wouldn't mind seeing. I hope that they do eventually do that, but yeah, but I've always kind of liked Andrew Garfield as Spider-Man. He was never what I would consider my favorite of the Spider-Man actors. I mean, obviously, Tobey Maguire, I think, is the best one, but Andrew Garfield, he did a fine job as Spider-Man, I think, as Peter Parker. This movie, yeah, it does have its problems, a lot of the plot, really doesn't add up, you could say, especially when he's trying to find his Uncle Ben's killer. He just eventually gives up on finding him, and also, the deal with the lizards in the city, how Dr. Connors is turning people into lizards, and you never really know what happened to them after all of this occurs. Yeah, there's definitely a lot of confusion and a lot of questionable moments in this movie. This is an origin story, so of course this is when Peter Parker loses Uncle Ben. This is when Spider-Man gets his powers, and I know that a lot of people during the life cycle of Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man films, like back in the Andrew Garfield era of Spider-Man, I remember a lot of people said that these films are actually better than the Raimi films because they're more comic book accurate. Now, you can think of that what you want. For me, I still think the Raimi trilogy is better, at least the first two anyways, but yeah, but I guess if you're a comic book fanatic, then sure, but I don't know. I feel like a lot of the consensus has changed with a lot of these films. I feel like a lot of people really started to kind of abandon these films, never really paid much attention to them, because of course at the time these were the newest Spider-Man films. there was a time where Andrew Garfield was Spider-Man, and he still is, of course. Obviously, he made an appearance in No Way Home, spoiler alert, which who doesn't already know that at this point, but I mean, I do think that this movie, it's a pretty good origin story. It does have similarities to the first Sam Raimi film, and the villain in this film is the Lizard. And what do I think of the Lizard? I think he's okay in this movie. Definitely not my favorite of the Spider-Man villains, but, I think he's all right in this movie, I do like the fight scenes with Spider-Man and Lizard in this movie, especially when they're in the school, and there's a lot of standout moments in this movie for sure, like the bridge scene, when he's hanging all those cars off the bridge. I mean, that's pretty cool. And also the crane scene as well, when that guy helps Spider-Man swing and, all those cranes moving. That Spider-Man just swinging and, the swinging scenes in general, they're pretty fun to watch. And I do appreciate that with the Andrew Garfield Spider-Man films, is the swinging scenes are pretty fun to watch, especially in the second one. But yeah, it's definitely a highlight for sure. And of course, Peter eventually falls for Gwen Stacy, and then Captain Stacy eventually gets killed by the Lizard, and, yeah, there are definitely some notable moments in this movie for sure, and, there's things to like about it, but once again, there's certain plot points that are kind of iffy, kind of questionable, but I think it's a pretty enjoyable film for what it is. You can sit through it and not really feel bored with it, maybe besides a few moments in this movie. But yeah, not a bad movie. I mean, it's definitely not the best Spider-Man film, but for what it is, I think it's pretty good. So as a score, if I were to give this movie a score, maybe a 7 out of 10. I think an 8 is too high. Definitely not a 9 or a 10, because this is by no means the best Spider-Man film, but it's maybe the best one of the Andrew Garfield era of Spider-Man. But yeah, it's a pretty good movie for what it is. So yeah, that's my review for The Amazing Spider-Man. It's a solid movie, but it's by no means perfect or anything. Not the best Spider-Man film, but pretty good for what it is. So I'll just leave it at that. So let me know what you guys think of The Amazing Spider-Man. Have you seen this movie? Do you actually like it? Feel free to let me know. So on that note, thank you for watching and have a good one.